Honestly, like I felt exactly the same way since I was young as well. I also did not really love the Bollywoodization of everything. I would be called a burger, which I am. Fair enough. I am a burger. We are on the burger shop. You know what I mean? I would be called a burger because I'm like, oh, I don't really with this Bollywood stuff.
The way that people are now, it's like, I'm waking up to this. I've woken up. Bollywood's shown its ugly face to us for the first. Like, bro, and we were talking about this earlier, where this just reeks of the same complacency and hypocrisy of Pakistanis waking up to what a fraud Malala is.
Yeah.
It's the exact same sentiment.
Malala, that's a controversial opinion. What's so bad about Malala?
Oh, Malala, tum badal gayi ho. You know what broke my heart? So, I follow a lot of the design pages and stuff. I nerd out about the interior design and whatnot.
Yeah.
This page is called Wendy Morrison's Design. I would actually encourage people to look it up. They've got this Mughal series in which they're making rugs, handmade rugs. They're painting wallpapers. Mm-hmm. And a lot of other interior products are Mughal based. Each of these articles sells for like 10,000, 50,000 pounds.
Okay, wow.
They are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
They're in fact so beautiful. They're so authentic seeming. Okay, bro. So for a couple of decades now, so since I was like 5, I've been trying to tell people they need to have a healthier relationship with Indian content and Bollywood in general.
Okay.
What I've always meant when I said that was that if there's an industry that runs off portraying you in a bad light, that makes movies telling you how terrible you are and that the extent of your culture is adab and wearing surma and saying janab.
Yeah.
Okay? So, you probably should moderate your relationship with that industry and that culture.
Yeah.
The hatred that they very visibly feel towards us, the opportunities that they don't miss to hate on us when any tension flares up between our countries. Mm-hmm. I don't reciprocate that hatred.
Yeah.
But you have to operate with a certain level of self-respect with a culture that's always mischaracterizing you, trolling you. And this was an unpopular opinion to have.
Yeah,
until
definitely
very recently.
Until very recently.
Why?
Now people like you and me, hey, our ideas are suddenly acceptable. So honestly, like I felt exactly the same way since I was young as well. I also did not really love the Bollywoodization of everything. I would be called a burger, which I am. Fair enough. I am a burger. We are on the burger shop. You know what I mean? I would be called a burger because I'm like, oh, I don't really with this Bollywood stuff. I don't want to go to my friend's wedding and dance like I'm like, some sort of and I should not be made to feel guilty about it because I'm like, how is this relevant to us? You know what I mean? And I definitely felt at the same thing where there's too much of an emphasis on their cultural norms and their cultural practices in our society. And the root cause of that is, in my opinion, their media, which en masse we do consume. And this was a very unpopular opinion that I would get a lot of for. But now, hey, this idea is getting a little bit more popular and I can say it a little bit more confidently.
So, but do you see how shallow this newfound realization that, oh, maybe we shouldn't be so intimate with Indian content?
Yeah.
Do you see how hypocritical and shallow this sentiment is? Because if you're saying that I won't engage with this content because the industry doesn't like me, if that's your logic, it's not a particularly deep logic.
Yeah.
It's a reactionary, it's a weak stance to have.
Yeah.
Right? The much more mature stance, which I think we hold, not to talk us up too much, but I think like, we hold, is that there's something intrinsically foreign about Bollywood.
Yeah.
And while there's no ban on, or there shouldn't be any personal ban on consuming any content from anywhere, right? You do need to moderate how you interact with that content. And if it's turning into your entire identity, if it dictates how you dress, how you marry, how you love, if it dictates all of these things, you
love
probably
in
need to
particular,
check.
and even a lot of the attitudes that we do adopt en masse, which is like, some of the egotism that we say, like, ye to Bollywood film star ban raha hai, like macho man type shit, which is like, I'm not against macho man shit, like I'm totally for it. But the way it's done, it definitely feels very, very performative in our culture. And I would attribute some of that to the media.
100%. And the way that people are now, it's like, I'm waking up to this. I've woken up. Bollywood shown its ugly face to us for the first. Like, bro, and we were talking about this earlier, where this just reeks of the same complacency and hypocrisy of Pakistanis waking up to what a fraud Malala is.
Yeah.
It's the exact same sentiment.
Malala, that's a controversial opinion. What's so bad about Malala?
Bro, apparently if you criticize this one individual, you're like against like women getting education or something. Like, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
But bro, the Malala discourse has just been, bro, nothing gives me more pleasure than seeing like a desi boomer waking up just to how much of a sham the entire Malala project is, because it's like, oh, you didn't give a strongly worded statement on Kashmir. You didn't give a strongly worded statement of Palestine. I'm so surprised. They're all like, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's like, no, that is not the correct response. The correct response is not, oh, Malala, tum badal gayi ho. The correct response is, the right wingers, apparently, the people who are apparently against women's education, some other absurd categorization that you made of them, they were right all along, and they were trying to tell you. Yeah. Like many other psyops before her and many other psyops after, she is nothing but a psychological operation by the West against us.
Wait, so you're telling me that the little girl who co-produces musicals with Hillary Clinton, the same Hillary Clinton who signed up for the bombardment of our entire region, somehow does not have our best interests at heart?
Bro, I know this sounds absurd.
That is absurd, bro. How did I miss this?
Bro, Asil mein, I'm a right-wing nut job.
You're a right-wing nut job.
I'm a reactionary.
Yeah, you're a reactionary.
That's the only reason. Bro, I have like this veil of ignorance that I live under, so I make these kinds of assertions. There's nothing to substantiate it. There aren't the bombing campaigns of an entire, Western hegemony that basically withered away the entire region adjacent to us in the world. None of that, it has nothing to do with that. Yeah. It has everything to do with the fact that
you're sexist.
I'm a prick, bro.
You're a sexist prick. That's what you are.
Yeah. But anyways, like, it's the same thing with the Bollywood stuff. It's like you wake up one day and you're like so surprised that all these Indian celebrities are posting about Operation Sindoor and how their army did a great job. Because they didn't.
Yeah.
But how they did a great job. And while everyone from our side is celebrating our response, but in what context? They're celebrating our response in the concept that on the context that we've achieved strategic parity. Uska fayda kya hai? That long term, there's a stasis which ensures peace, right? That we've dealt with the entire affair with dignity, that we didn't target civilians, right? And that our media was super responsible about it. So look at what we're taking pride in and look at what they're taking pride in.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're specifically addressing is the people waking up to this and suddenly saying, yaar, we're so surprised India mein
I thought we were same, Emmy.
I thought we were same.
I thought Pakistan, India, same people. Turns out we're not.
Bro, there's this really wild concept that I heard of the other day for the first time, bro. Have you ever heard of the two-nation theory?
Yeah, I've heard of the two-nation theory, but I don't know what it's about.
Bro, basically, it's this thing that was it was pigeonholed, and it was specifically reserved for reactionary right-wing nut jobs, such as us, who didn't want a one world government, one culture, one everything.
Yeah.
Right. But now more people are waking up to it for the first time. It's kind of pathetic. It's extra pathetic because imagine your sociological, civilizational awakening was because, I don't know, give me an Indian actress's name.
Actor, actress?
Actor, anyone.
Shah Rukh Khan.
No, he's cool. No, like, I don't know, but you're
how about Javed Akhtar? That's a Muslim who hates Muslims.
Yeah, no, but
Javed Akhtar, yeah, that guy.
Something more, bro. Imagine your entire civilizational awakening is because Katrina Kaif made a tweet about Operation Sindoor. Like, that's how down in the dumps you are. That's how like Instagram based your morality is.
Yeah,
that says something pretty terrible about you.
It does, and I think now is the right time we should pivot to something a little bit bigger that we see, and that's the first principles of like media and media consumption. Mm-hmm. So you were making a very, very interesting point. I was speaking to you about this today, about how socially, we've created boundaries and regulations about our consumption of social media, about our consumption of gambling, about our consumption of, porn. Like, people say like you shouldn't consume this stuff too much for obvious reasons.
Or at all.
Or at all, because these things are not good for you psychologically. But you were making a very, very interesting case about how the responsible consumption should apply to movies, music as well. Can you elaborate on that?
But the idea there is, look, any conversation like this always comes off as sounding a little draconian, a little thought policey, a little like if someone came to me and said, "This is the correct way to read this book,"
Yeah.
I would smack them across the face. Right? That would be my first instinct.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make here is self-moderation.
Yeah.
Right? There needs to be some sort of active psychological filter when you're consuming anything, right? So, for instance, when you're consuming rap music,
Yeah.
right? There's an extent to which a piece of media can sway you, right?
Yeah.
If I'm here, I'm listening like King Von or like Drake or something.
Yeah.
It's not going to turn me into those people overnight. I don't live in that context.
Yeah.
Right? It may have some sort of effect on me. It's not going to take me all the way.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about media that focuses a lot on familial relationships,
yeah,
love, respect, everyday life,
yeah,
that you see depicted in Bollywood, the attitudes that you have there are inevitably going to seep into society. You see, the most random example, right, is like these ideas, but also these mannerisms seep into the broader patchwork of society, and then it manifests and is regurgitated in a weird way. So I was talking to you about this earlier as well. So there's like the Bollywood simp superstars who are like, crying with all these tears, and they're like, they're like rending apart their shirts, and all these really exaggerated over the top movements. And then 10 years later, 20 years later, what do you have? You've got these Indian villagers on TikTok. Their entire content is just putting like pani in their eyes, pretending to cry, having red bloodshot eyes, and abhi shirt phad hai, kabhi kuch kare, and they're getting millions of views off this.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like it's come full circle.
Yeah.
So what relationship do we have with their content? We're like, okay, to a certain level, you can consume it, you can benefit from it.
For sure, yeah. Right? I mean, art is a great medium to learn more about society and stuff. I'm not going to take that away from art. But yeah, what were you saying?
Sure, you're watching Indian movies, you're listening to Indian music, you're appreciating the market that they've created, and see how India is always a few years ahead of us, and we do have a lot of genuinely similar social dynamics that you can use it as a blueprint in terms of how you can grow your industry, how you can innovate around certain things, and maybe then adapt that to your own social context.
Yeah.
Right. But never, I think, should you reach a point where you go to any function in our wedding season, right? You can't teleport us from that. We're not the same people, right? And seeing us just becoming this amorphous mass that just melts into our neighbor that looks down upon us, our neighbor that doesn't even want to have a conversation. We're not a part of the conversation for them. We're not a part of the conversation with you strategically.
Yeah.
At least I'm talking about in their world of wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Culturally, though not at all. And their entire discourse about us is that this is
one big mistake, one big blot on our memory. Like, these guys don't even claim the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire is the greatest period of time in the subcontinent's history. They actively reject that part of the history because it is more affiliated with us being the Muslims.
Which is kind of ridiculous in the sense that there's a more reasonable take to that.
Yeah.
Which is that, okay, for instance, you take the couple of 100 years of British rule. Right? What is the correct way to deal with that legacy? Is it possible for any of us to like the fact that we were governed by a foreign nation several thousand miles away for a couple of 100 years? No.
Yeah.
Right? But does that mean you
pretend like it didn't happen?
Pretend like it didn't happen, tear down all the monuments and the amazing things that they need here, and say, yeah, उन्होंने रेलवे बनाया था हमारा एक वक्त पे हम कभी उसे ठीक कर नहीं सके लेकिन जो वो बना के गए थे हम उसको भी उखाड़ देंगे
Yeah.
we hate that.
Yeah.
You know, that's the level that's where you don't want to get to.
Yeah.
So that same way they could have a healthy identity instead of this perpetual identity crisis that they're in.
I mean, yeah, I mean, to this day, like Indian subcontinental architecture, for one, like you claim the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal is on every single Indian postcard, but you don't want to claim the empire that built that. You know, basically, that's the ultimate like example of that cognitive dissonance.
I mean, तुम्हें बाबरी मस्जिद तोड़नी है तो ये भी तोड़ लो. Why are you being selective?
Yeah,
do it now.
Yeah.
You know? नहीं उससे डॉलर मिलते हैं.
उससे डॉलर मिलते हैं. And it's at its core, it's cognitive dissonance that their society deals with. But I think the cognitive dissonance also applies to us in the context of. Think about it like this. And I see this example as something that hits a bit closer to home. Because I'm a young guy, and I see guys adopt this type of mindset, you know? I feel like Pakistani men, it's Indian men as well, en masse, are unbelievably hopelessly romantic to a point where it's a little bit concerning, you know? And I think that this impression of us, that we think that, you know, our relationship with women should be like, are very, very influenced by Bollywood movies. Let me elaborate on that. Like, take the quintessential Shah Rukh Khan role, you know, which is, you know, I am this little middle class kid and I go to Switzerland to bag this rich guy's daughter who's engaged to get married. And what do I have to offer her? My heart, you know? Dil wale dulan le jayenge. You know what I mean? And a lot of guys look at this and be like, oh, this is how the real world works. My commitment to this woman is enough. My love for her is enough. And that's why I deserve XYZ woman. So you have this weird thing going on where on one hand, you're hopelessly romantic as a culture, you know? Your celebration around marriage, your celebration around love, bro, all your popular music and art and stuff is in some way related, shape or form to love. Romantic love. But at the same time, it's also the society which has the most cases of like, you know, female abuse, all these type of weird violence type of things. So I think this is the pinnacle of that cognitive dissonance at work. And how at one point can you have some of the most romantic, hopelessly romantic men in the world, but also some of the most violent?
Doesn't Bollywood speak to this polarization? In the sense that, admittedly, I don't consume a lot of Bollywood content, so I'm a bad judge of this. But on the one hand, you've got the Shah Rukh Khan archetype.
Yeah.
And then you've got this movie that a friend of mine recently showed me, Animal.
Yeah.
So you've got that.
Yeah.
Right? So if you don't have a well-integrated human being representing you as a young man or whatever, and it's these two extremes, then the fact that it seeps down into society is not particularly surprising. Don't you think?
Yeah, it is, because we unfortunately at some point we gave up control over our own artistic expression. We haven't developed our own version of artistic expression, and so as a proxy we take theirs.
So I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. Not enough, but a bit. And the thing that I keep coming back to is you've got, you know, 70s, 80s, under the 2000s, you've got Pakistani pop. It's where a lot of it's good. It's very Western inspired, right? The indelible mark of Bollywood in India, I don't need to explain that to anyone. It's for all to see. It's always been there and it still is there, right? Even in fact, someone was telling us this today, that for the entire duration of our recent conflict with them, the top picks in our movies on like Amazon Prime and Netflix were Indian movies.
Yeah.
Right? So there's this strange peeping Tom thing happening where at once there's this weird word happening where you're like, okay, this is my foe. I'm also going to observe every single thing he does and try to be like him.
Yeah.
Right? So what is this? This kind of weird repressed aspirationalism where you're like, you know, I'm going to hate on him until I can be him.
Yeah.
Right? But so if it's all focused, if all of your creative energies are focused in towards becoming either like the West or like Bollywood, what are you sacrificing? Obviously, there's something indigenous, something native, something true to ourselves that we're sacrificing.
Yeah.
Where does that begin?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough question. The thing that I keep coming back to is we've got a very strong socio-religio cultural legacy when it comes to poetry, when it comes to ghazals, when it comes to art, when it comes to all of these things.
Yeah.
Right? And when you're
when it comes to history, because apparently our neighbors don't claim the Mughal Empire. The Mughal Empire, we should claim it. Bro, we are the Muslims. We are the Muslims of the subcontinent. That is one of the greatest empires in human history. So I think history as well. We have great history as Muslims of the subcontinent.
But you know what broke my heart? So I follow a lot of the design pages and stuff. I nerd out about the interior design and whatnot.
Yeah.
This page is called Wendy Morrison's Designs. I would actually encourage people to look it up. They've got this Mughal series in which they're making rugs, handmade rugs. They're painting wallpapers.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other interior products are Mughal based. Each of these articles sells for like 10,000, 15,000 pounds.
Okay, wow.
They are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
They're in fact so beautiful. They're so authentic seeming that when I look at them, not only do I wonder, did a subcontinental artisan make this?
Mm.
I also am not surprised at the price after finding out, despite the fact that it's expensive. Right?
Yeah.
And what aches when you're admiring this incredible work is that यार ये उधर बन भी सकता है, बिक भी सकता है, पाकिस्तान में ना बन रहा है ना बिक रहा है उस तरह की कोई चीज. It's just gorgeous. We put it up in post. Right?
Yeah.
And so you've got this heritage. That you've got Mughal miniatures.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you've got the ghazals and the poetries of the past couple of hundred years in our Urdu language, which is beyond phenomenal. It's universally acknowledged how beautiful it is. हमें क्या पता हम तो बर्गर हैं लेकिन सुना है होगा अच्छा.
सुना है अलामा इकबाल का अच्छी पोएट थे मैं सुना है.
But that, bro, have you ever? So we know the worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world is I once asked someone if they read Shikwa Jawabi Shikwa, and they're like, no, the only thing I've read by Allama Iqbal is taking issue with Allah's answer. It's the same thing translated, bro. It's the same thing. Okay? No, but my point is, we've got so much.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not taking it anywhere. We're not doing anything with it.
Where do you think we went wrong? Why do you think we never able to break that glass ceiling and make our own, like, cultural output? Because we've seen many countries like India, whatever it is, they made their own cultural output. Like today, Korean movies, K-pop is widely regarded around the world as, hey, this is really, really amazing. It's like world renowned, It's a developed industry. Turkish film, we watch a lot of Turkish stuff now. Irani film. They like all these like comparative cultures who kind of have the same, who are in the same like second world type of thing as us.
Yeah.
They all develop their cultures. Why do you think, where did we go wrong?
Bro, and this is where I think our creative industry and the more liberal-minded folk who are more sympathetic towards that industry and the conservatives both have gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Why I say that is you've got the creatives making content that is absolutely alien, absolutely foreign to us. It has no root in subcontinental Islamic culture, right? And what the conservatives are saying, they're making a genuine and I think often very reasonable critique of that creative output.
Yeah.
Except where they end up going wrong is they end up demonizing art altogether as a result of that criticism. So
neither desi rap is the answer, nor is not making any art the answer.
Absolutely. There has to be some golden ratio. And it's not going to be precise. It's not going to be completely clean. It's not going to be puritanical. But there will be some balance where people realize, like, okay, take Irani films is a great place to begin this conversation.
Yeah.
Because under the censorship of the past 40, 50 years, you call it censorship, you can also, yes, it is technically censorship. There is another way to look at it. There should be certain socio-cultural guidelines that the mass of your people actually adhere to, and you're being asked to make quality content within those guidelines.
Yeah.
Guidelines that, by the way, exist everywhere. The guardrails in the West nowadays have shifted. So you have this section.
They have their I would say that they have very, very strict guardrails as well. Like tomorrow, if you make like a movie that's like sympathizing with suppose,
no, absolutely,
that's not allowed.
No,
that's not allowed.
No.
It's not like the West does not have their moral framework. It's different to us, but they have a very, very distinct moral framework. Like sympathetically showcasing a left-wing cause like the communist or the socialist in film. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's like, applauded, but they do have their line where it's like, the far right and stuff like that. That's not a line you play with.
It's even touchier than that.
It's even touchier,
I was trying to make the same point essentially. I was trying to say, okay, we've got our guardrails. The West may be in denial about the fact that they have guardrails, but theirs in some ways are even touchier than ours nowadays. So, for instance, the R word, the N word.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Things that have to do with certain minorities, self-identifying minorities.
Yeah.
You can't talk about this stuff at all.
For sure, you can't.
You can't joke about it the way you would joke about everyone else.
I mean, you can't even theorize and talk about in mainstream alternative history. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Alternative history is a no-go. We have the post-war consensus. You live and die by this. Don't question that thing. So.
It's their religion.
It's their religion. It's their moral framework. And debate as to whether the moral framework is fair or not, is it right or wrong, is a totally different conversation. Yeah. Point is, they do have one.
Exactly. So I think there in Pakistan, the moment you're honest with yourself for a second, right, and you tell yourself and you accept that we've got guardrails too.
Yeah.
Right. And the true space for genuine art and innovation comes when you accept those guardrails and you try to innovate within those guardrails, right?
Yeah.
Iran, why is Iran a great example of this? Because, like you said, you've got all these strict stipulations. Yet, every time, and this is someone was telling us, specifically worded it really well earlier today, was when you see an Iranian name pop up at a big at a big movie festival, right? You immediately take it seriously. Like, dude, there's going to be some depth, some texture, some layers to whatever we're seeing. This is probably going to be good and you want to see it. Yeah. It's fascinating. It has a certain exoticism about it that if Pakistan were to achieve, it would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
We don't have to make that mass market, watered down, lowest common denominator kind of film industry that India is trying to make. So on the one hand, when you have people, you've got people in the industry here saying, yes, we need to grow our industry. Of course, it's always a good thing.
Yeah.
But at what cost?
Yeah.
What direction do you want to take? Do you want to take the India direction? Do you want to take the Iran direction?
Yeah.
I would always
You don't want to make cheap Pakistani subcontinental copies of culture that are like, I personally have a big problem with like desi rap, because rap in particular is like where this is summed up more than anything. Like, if you look at the history of rap music, it's a very particularly black person thing. These guys were not necessarily able to afford the instruments and the production machinery you need to make different types of music. So they started like being poets. It's a particular historicity to the rap art form, A guy singing about like gang banging in Harlem and stuff, great. He can do that better than anyone else. It's authentic. It's true to his life. But when I hear you gang banging from Liari or something, it's like, why is this unique?
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
I was having this exact conversation with a group of friends the other day. And I was like, look, I like the fact that there's an industry. I like the fact that I will never hate on the fact that there's like young guys making it, right? And that's fine. I was like, look, it doesn't feel particularly authentic to me.
Yeah, it's not.
So they mounted a 1 hour long rhetorical defense of their case saying, no, Pakistani rap is so, innovative and it's new and it's pioneering and trailblazing. Okay, they say all of this, right? And you know what song they play from you after? It's like 4 a.m. in Karachi, 5 a.m. in Karachi. I was like, bro,
it's like
the beat the
4 a.m.
name,
in Karachi.
this is a Drake song, bro.
This is a Drake song.
So I was like, bro, after all of that, you're gonna sum it up with this? I feel like you're pranking me. Like,
Yeah.
And then actually, they played some Indian music for me after.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a level of synthesis, fusion, whatever you want to call it. This influence that if there is a dominant soft power in the world, which is, the West, the US, whatever, right? Their sound, their aesthetics will inevitably seep into certain aspects of what you're doing. That's fine. That's natural cultural exchange.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, also the technical equipment you're using,
all the
technical equipment is made by them. If you're using synthesizers, if you're using a mixing software on a computer,
so
it's going to sound a little bit polished and cleaned up according to what.
So what you say
is,
right? But if you hear a beat drop and you have no idea what part of the world this is from, it ends up being a little inauthentic, right? And again, I don't think this is being thought policey, because if that applied to one song off your album or 2 songs off your album, you could say I'm experimenting. If that's every song off your album, then it reaches a point where you're kind of like, actually, maybe you need to start thinking for yourself a little, right? And this is not to say that people stop supporting these artists.
Yeah.
But to have expectations of them is probably not a bad thing.
No, absolutely.
Because when they played some Indian music for me, yes, there was some level of, that was also kind of derivative. You could see the Western influence, that's fine. But there was also some music. Yeah, I'll try to put that up in post. Which I listened to and I was like, no, actually, this is Indian, right? The same way I had another person, play some like Latin American. It was like Bad Bunny or something. And yeah, that guy's rapping. But every time there's a beat drop in a Bad Bunny song, it's Latin American.
Yeah.
Immediately. You couldn't mistake it.
Yeah, and it's not like we haven't been able to make our own cool subgenres out of Western influence. Like Sufi rock was huge in like the late 80s, early 90s, where like these guys are classically influenced by the Led Zeppelin, the Pink Floyds of this world, but they put a Sufi twist on it. You know what I mean? It's good music, and it did show some degree of ingenuity, creativity. It's not a copy paste of, hey, let me just sing a Pink Floyd song in Urdu. It's not that. It actually has something unique to say. It has a unique perspective. I do think that, a lot of the art that, we do create in our country is basically, hey, listen, let's just desi-fy this. It's like, it's like desi versions of westernized food. There's like desi Chinese, there's like a desi pizza, there's a desi, a burger. And it's fine. It's okay. It's good to taste and stuff. But ultimately, like, the real magic happens when you are kind of, like, authentic about these things.
And look, it's... When you're talking about art, where we have to speak in absolutes because we're trying to make a point, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, on a very specific level, it's not that easy to be like, is beat ka, is voice inflection ki jo origin is from this place to that place. It's not so wise maybe always to be so pedantic about art, but what meaning does it have, even if it sounds good, if there's no indigeneity about it at all?
Yeah.
Right? There's a certain level, like, so, if you listen to like trap or something.
Yeah.
If you listen to like, like Ken Carson, whoever.
Yeah.
You might enjoy the beat, right? There might be certain sentiments conveyed in that music where you're like, this is kind of nice. It's fun. It's enjoyable. Can it ever imbue you with the same kind of meaning that Iqbal can? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Probably not. I hope not. You're probably very culturally confused if you're listening to Taylor Swift and you're like, yes, this gives me life.
Here's the thing. I think like even with this stuff, right? And I'm going to be called an elitist for this, but taste is not as subjective as we make it out to be. Taste is somewhat objective. And like Taylor
Swift, bro, you know what the ultimate metric is? Bro, my taste is the best.
My taste is the best.
My taste is the best.
But how I know that I'm dealing with someone who does have good taste? Okay. Like, I suppose Taylor Swift is your favorite artist, If all you ever listen to is the Billboard Hot 100 and you come to the conclusion that Taylor Swift is the most innovative artist ever, I'm not going to particularly think you have good taste because you have not explored, you haven't like done the effort in work to actually find something that really speaks to you. You're going to do the lowest common denominator, which is you're going to listen to the radio, you're going to look at pop charts, top 100, and you're like, this is the best thing. Yeah, it might be the best thing for you available on that list. Fair enough. And I don't think, and that's fair, but you can't claim that as superior taste. I think, however, if you are the type of person who has gone through the annals of musical history, you've listened to Madonna, you've listened to Kate Bush, you've listened to Radiohead, you've listened to Led Zeppelin, you've listened to Pink Floyd, you've listened to all these crazy people, even more contemporary people, you've dabbled in the niches. And you still come to the conclusion that, hey, no, I think Taylor Swift is special. I can respect that perspective because you have explored and you have still come to the conclusion that, hey, no, this pop thing that everyone likes is great. It's like, pop doesn't mean, I'm just to clarify, I don't mean like pop means bad. Like Michael Jackson is amazing, but there's a difference between a value of opinion to somebody who's listened to everything, who's listened to nothing other than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in that sense, I do think taste is objective. And quote, like that's my perspective.
In the sense that you can have an opinion, it's pretty terrible, like saying Taylor Swift is the best artist of all time.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, like Lucky is the best artist of all time.
Yeah.
But you can have opinions that are wrong, but respectable.
Yeah.
Right? The idea of having taste is about having opinions that are respectable. Yeah. Opinions that you can defend, that you can make a case for.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for instance, we were doing, my friends and I were discussing top 10 rappers the other day. Most of my picks, I'd say, were pretty uncontroversial. I, half in jest, said, I think Playboy Cardi is on that list.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I say half in jest because I really respect someone who can pioneer an entire niche.
Yeah.
Who can harness the frayed momentum of many genres that preceded you, right? And then become the forefather of a new movement, and then you spawn like this entire new genre and subgenre of music.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that even if you don't particularly enjoy someone's music, that is a feat that is remarkable.
Yeah.
And based off that alone, you can include someone in like a GOAT conversation, right? Or a top 10
Fair
conversation,
enough.
right? Now,
but you're a rap head. You have the prerequisite knowledge. It's like, you've listened to all the Nas, all the Jay-Z, all the Rakim. You've listened to all of this stuff, and then you're coming to that conclusion.
Yes.
Playboy Cardi.
After all the
but if you're some chud who's listened to just the Lil Baby and the Baby, and you're like, no, Playboy Cardi is the GOAT, it's like, okay, there's a difference in value of that opinion.
No, and look, I'm not saying there aren't great arguments to be made to say that he shouldn't be there. But my point is, I have been intimate enough with this entire canon of music that I believe I can make a case for this artist that's hard to argue against. And before all the midwits in the comments start telling us about how ridiculous it is that I'm talking about Playboy Cardi being the GOAT next to like Jay-Z or whoever, my entire point is this. That's what we're trying to say. You can have a ridiculous pick, but if you're cultured enough and if you can make a case for it, I think that's respectable.
Yeah.
So, all this media that we've been talking about, the things that you consume on a daily basis, any form of art, will either polish or rust your being, right? Depending on how you look at it. But the idea that it won't affect you at all requires a certain level of arrogance that I am not brave enough to have, right? So, take music, for example. I've had times in my life where I've been in a certain kind of not so great mood, and I've listened to sad music. I've gotten a certain message or
emotional
release from it. I've integrated that lesson, and then I moved on with my life, and it's felt good.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I've also had times where, say we're sitting together right now, just bantering, and someone plays like Someone Like You by Adele or something. Some like sad song,
Yeah.
And then, you might tell yourself, oh, this is tugging at my heartstrings a little bit, for whatever reason. This is making me kind of sad. This is making me vulnerable. You might be naive enough to conclude from there that I'm such a nice, vulnerable, sweet boy.
Yeah.
All it takes is a little song, and I get in my feels. Yeah. I'm such a nice, sensitive, soft boy.
Yeah.
There's another interpretation of that at times, that if something makes you ruminate too much if it makes you wallow in yourself, and if it makes you think about yourself and your sadness
or
way too much,
any emotion for that matter. I think if like if something is like spurring on anger in you too much, if something is making you happier and cockier than you need to be in a specific, like rap does it make you cocky and like I'm the shit, but hey listen, can you just be a human being for a second? You might not actually be the shit.
If you've got a general societal criticism about how you shouldn't watch certain movies or listen to certain music was going to turn you a certain way, that should apply to even the softer forms of art.
Yeah.
The ones that talk about love, loss, sadness, etc.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it apply there? And in this era where wallowing in yourself and thinking about yourself and dwelling on your misfortunes is so romanticized, of course people are going to say, so what? Let them feel, let them think, let them cry.
Yeah.
I can imagine how once in a while it's a good thing for you.
For sure,
right?
yeah.
But not all the time.
Absolutely not.
I can think of so many people that I've seen throughout the course of my life who are going through
it's like the art they consume ends up becoming their personality. They could have been a totally stable, functional human being, and because all they're doing is watching sad movies or horror movies, and all they're listening to is like sad, depressing Radiohead or something like that, they start becoming kind of like doomers.
Bro, their entire personality is like, yeah, man,
and honestly, this is something that almost anyone can relate to. Like, I listen to a pretty like out there, I listen to some pretty out there type of stuff. You know what I mean? One of my favorite bands, like for example, is Alice in Chains. Alice in Chains makes some amazing music, but Alice in Chains' lead singer was an infamous heroin addict who pretty much exclusively sang about his sadness and his heroin addiction. And he did it in a pretty cool way, like you pretty intense, but like when I'm listening to that stuff, it does have an emotional impact on me. But I have to regulate, like, bro, listen, Arbaz, you're not a heroin addict. Listen, Arbaz, you're not a degen like this guy. So you need to take all this with a grain of salt. There needs to be some self-regulation when I'm consuming that art. You know, I can't relate to it too much. You know what I mean? It's kind of dangerous to relate to some of these artists too much.
No, and look, the music becomes an essential part of your subcultures as well, right? So, for example, there's a reason everyone's smoking weed while listening to Bob Marley or Snoop Dogg, right? It's a thing, right? Or there's a reason that you're, even healthy ways, there's a reason you're listening to certain people when you go to the gym, or when you go for a run, right? Or then there's like rage music, and there's a whole gamut of things you can possibly access, right? But all of it affects you. All of it has some blemish or some positive mark that it leaves in records.
Yeah.
And none of us are about it.
The point is that there should be some degree of responsible consumption of media. These things should come with like warning stickers. And even as a nation, like this, how this relates to our entire nation's psyche is that we pretty much irresponsibly consume a lot of the stuff that might not be in line with our actual values of what we actually think and what we actually believe. And it does cognitive dissonance. And I think the key to this type of problem is to develop our own indigenous thing. Now, you and I both know this. I mean, you and I both agree on this. We're both Zia-ul Haq truthers. You know? I think Zia-ul Haq personally is one of the best leaders we've ever had in our country, given the circumstances he inherited the country in and how he left it in a position to survive and in some situations thrive. You know? And I think you agree with me on this. But one of the policies in the Zia-ul Haq time was that there was a much smaller emphasis on the arts and cultural development of our Pakistani society. And this void kind of enabled Indian art to come and take its roots in our culture, you know?
So I've gotten, not being very familiar with that era myself in terms of art. I've gotten mixed reviews. So there's a lot of people talk about the repression of art in that era. A lot of people also talk about how, it was a good era of PTV dramas and stuff like that. On the whole,
Yeah.
However that ultimately pans out, what we can agree on, and what I think we do agree on, is that his regime did not have a significant cultural aspect to it, right? And when you vacate the cultural, ideological playing field, there will always be something that comes into that vacuum. And in that case, it was Bollywood.
You know, it's not all bad. But we did vacate a big chunk of our ideological, philosophical grounds to things that are not ours.
What happens then is, or rather, and this is maybe the controversial bit, is that he didn't go quite far enough with the entire Islamization program, right?
Should have gone further.
Should have gone
It should have been all encompassing, even of the artistic culture development aspect of things.
It should have been aesthetically obvious. The character of his regime should have been aesthetically obvious. It should have been present even to this day that we went through an Islamic revolution. What I'm trying to say, like what I think we're trying to say, is that you had an era where there's someone who came at least professed culturally and religiously Islamic ideas. And that a certain positive way to capitalize on a moment or on a historical moment like that is to capture it and let it seep into the arts.
Yeah.
Right?
What that promote the arts of that particular thing. I mean, we've seen there's so many historical examples of Islamic empires or like, Islamic civilized nations who were very, very powerful, who placed a massive emphasis on the artistic and cultural development to the point where they would fund it, they would subsidize it. Like the Abbasid Empire famously spent about 3% of their GDP on the Beit al-Hikmah, which was basically where they would get the best thinkers, philosophers, mathematicians, polymaths, and put them together in the library or the house of wisdom, the Beit al-Hikmah, and they would innovate. These are the same guys who, refound the Greek philosophies, who reinterpreted them, who created algebra, who created geometry, who made incredible like cultural achievements because they actively and they, with an Islamic lens at the end of the day,
But what I find particularly
the Ottoman
is that the same people who fetishize history and often praise at least the artistic and cultural achievements of the Muslim world past, will also be the greatest critics of an Islamic regime. Right?
Yeah.
The idea that
cognitive dissonance.
What do you think? Was more culturally illiberal, Zia's regime, or certain Ottoman, Mughal, and other Islamic dispensations over time? What do you truly think had more guardrails in terms of ideological expression?
The Overton window is much narrower in like the Ottomans or the Abbasid Caliphate or something.
And yes, there will be exceptions, and you can argue those all day long when we're talking about the rule.
Yeah.
Right? It was at the very least comparable. There were certain things that you could talk about, certain things that you couldn't. Right? Yeah. You couldn't blaspheme the ideas of the day. That was at least constant.
Yeah.
Right? So, if you can make great art then, why can't you make great art now? What you're essentially arguing, maybe without realizing it, that because you can't make great Western art, because you can't make great Bollywoodized art, that for you is the equivalent of not being able to make great art. So you're telling on yourself, you're saying what we think is great art is these foreign, alien versions of art. Because we don't have the introspective capability to face up to ourselves, to dig deep and engage in some sort of ideological revanchism where you bring back Islamic ideals and you build on them. Because you don't have the capacity to do that, you bitch and you moan and you say, yaar, hamare paas cultural figure nahi. Tomorrow, if you replicate even just half of the grandeur of Mughal architecture or miniatures or our ghazals or our poetry or any of those things, what state authority is going to come beating down your neck? None of them. The only time that's going to happen is when you like insist that someone from, needs to go in front of this statue of Jinnah and like cross dress, and that's your modern form of expression and rebellion. Like, if that is your strain of innovation or artistic achievement, then you will feel repressed. You will feel repressed anyway.
Yeah. We should have doubled down on it. We should have become totally like top to bottom culturally. All of these things should have had an Islamic tint on them. And I tend to agree with that opinion. Right. I do. I think you would have had a much cooler, more innovative culture because of that.
And you will notice like at points, someone listening to this might say that, maybe you're being a bit vague. Like both of us, maybe you're being a bit vague. Like, what do you mean exactly? And, the classic midwit subjection, which is like, which version of Islam?
Yeah.
Which version? Which obviously that's not an exclusive harm of what we're posing. That can apply to anything. It's like, okay, which version of communism? Which version of liberal democracy? Like, obviously this is the stupidest textbook objection.
Yeah.
But my answer to that is, one, the mandate that you put on us, the burden that you put on us of filling in several hundred years of a lack of expression and innovation in a single podcast is simply too heavy to lift.
Yeah.
That's a lifelong project.
Yeah.
It's not something that we'll shirk, but it's a lifelong effort, right? The idea here is to have that conversation and be like, the entire returning to your roots thing is actually not as lame as you were taught it is. Who taught you that rebellion was cool? Who taught you that having teenage spirit was cool and all that? Bro, it was the same people whose media you consume all the time. Huh? It was all Western media. So, like, you see this.
And the same people that you're crying about Western colonialism, I only situate myself as a victim to Western colonialism. It's like, bro, there's too much cognitive dissonance.
So,
I don't fuck with it.
Bro, what I love about that is, I think I've told you the story before.
Yeah.
It applies perfectly to these people in Pakistan. Right?
Yeah.
Bro, in uni, and this was in Canada, I had a professor. She asked us to review her favorite book.
Yeah.
It was a book about indigenous people in Canada.
Yeah.
So, me being me, obviously, I flamed it. I knew it was her favorite book, but I just flamed it. And not without good reason.
Yeah.
The case I built was that this critique of white supremacy and settler colonialism by this indigenous person employs entirely the tools it uses to resist are continental philosophy.
Yeah.
That's white man's language.
Yeah.
Right? So what you're doing is you've been taught how to resist by the oppressor. The exact same thing applies here. Okay? Where it's like, okay, I went to Habib University. They taught me how to, how to engage in third world resistance. Hey, shut up, bro. What are you talking about?
I have such a similar story to this, man. Like, I went to SOAS from undergrad. If you don't know about SOAS is the most...
No, my sister went there. I'm well aware. Yeah.
Bro, SOAS is the most notoriously leftist university there is in the UK. And the subject I studied was economics and philosophy. So econ, I still had some rational people in econ. But philosophy is just like, I was all interested in it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to double major. I'm going to do this as well.
Okay.
Bro, the amount of time that I had in philosophy, I had a bunch of white girls telling me that, Pakistani people are oppressed. And like, the second, the semester was focusing on colonial thought and stuff. I wanted to pull my hair out. I'm like, listen, I am Pakistani. I live in Pakistan. All my friends are Pakistani. We don't see ourselves as some victims to British colonialism. It's not something we actively think about every day. We move past it. We're just living our life.
Bro, exactly the same way. Bro, have you noticed this entire culture?
It radicalized me, bro. It radicalized me. Like, I've like centered myself now, but like, I remember at that time, bro, I was so happy when Trump won. I still was kind of happy when he won the second time, but the first time, I'm like, bro, enough with these people.
Bro,
you know what I mean?
Jumping right off this is the entire cultural appropriation conversation, right? Bro, I remember there was like a Versace runway show a few years ago, quite a few years ago, in which they catwalked some outfits that looked a lot like shalwar kameezes. And I think GeoPay and a bunch of these other channels, they showed them and they were super happy. They're like, look, there's this inspiration that this very famous brand has taken from Pakistanis and has produced something very similar to it. The only people crying about it were desis in the West. And isn't that so curious? Right? I remember PragerU. We have lots of opinions on that. I have lots of opinions on that as a channel. But they made this excellent video years ago, before they were shilling this hard. They made this video where they went to a bunch of college students on like American campuses, and they were like, do you think me wearing a sombrero is cultural appropriation? Do you think it's bad? Oh, they went on these 10-minute long tirades about how you're a terrible, insensitive person if you wear a sombrero for Halloween. The same guys in that same video went to like so many actual Mexicans, like illegals, like they were like pro labor and stuff. They went to that.
But
Like, can I wear it?
Juan.
Yeah, a bunch of Juans.
Yeah.
They went to the Juans and they were like, dude, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Juan, can I wear a sombrero for Halloween? It's like, yeah, of course.
Yes, of course.
They literally, you were so happy about it. You want some beans with it? You want some beans with that sombrero? But they were so happy about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, why is it that all the people around the developing world and the third world don't care, or if anything, they're happy about the fact that you're appropriating their culture.
Yeah.
And it's all the losers who've lived there for a generation or two who are like crying about it all.
Bro, I swear, I think genuinely it gives to a bigger like first principles point. I think cultural appropriation is actually the best way to consume art.
You mean cultural exchange?
Cultural
the
exchange,
oldest like
Yeah.
exchange of humanity
Exactly.
ever.
It's like, bro, if I'm listening to rap music, the healthy way for me to consume it as a defense burger is I listen to it, I vibe with it a bit, maybe I take a lingo or two out of it, and that's the peak of it. I'm not a gangbanger from Harlem. I'm not a gangbanger from Compton. I can't pretend like I'm one with the culture. The best way, but I still want to appreciate the art. It's good art, you know. Why should I not consume the good art? I want to consume the good art.
Wait, hold on.
The best way to actually, in my opinion, consume art is through cultural appropriation, and this is what the white people have correct. This is why you don't see white, like, okay, there are a bunch of crazy crackers out there. I'm not saying there aren't, but for the most part, it's like they'll do a little bit of the Hare Krishna stuff, but then it's like, hey, can I have like, bland chicken and rice for dinner? You're gonna go back to the suburban houses. I think this is a healthier way of consuming art. I don't have to situate myself entirely in the arts context to appreciate it. And I think that actually, self-regulation.
That's what's fascinating.
This is actually how
that's why it's cool.
This is exactly how, in my opinion, you self-regulate something like this. You need to keep that context into account, and you need to understand, hey, this is not me at the end of the day.
Isn't that what makes it great?
That is what makes it right.
You don't have, हर चीज आप अपनाना शुरू कर देंगे, this is an intrinsic part of me. Firstly, that is the most BS thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You can't do it. And what an absurd and what a draconian way of thinking, where you're like, you know what? I don't want you to consume my art because you'll never understand it, you'll never relate. And dude, that idea is actually much darker than it initially seems, because what you're not just saying that you can't relate to this. The reasoning they give, which they think is really enlightened, which is like, you haven't had our lived experiences, so you can't relate. Isn't that kind of dark? Because you're seeing you can never arrive to a common vision of humanity because you haven't lived what I've lived. Exactly. You shouldn't have to. That's what mutual respect and understanding and living side with. That's what coexistence is.
But basically saying that you're like, you don't have the right to understand where I'm coming from, and let's keep this arrangement where I feel consistently victimized and I feel consistent contempt towards you for victimizing me. And how about you don't try to understand it?
It's the most racist shit on the planet.
It is.
That is so ridiculous.
It is counterproductive. It is evil in a way. It is evil.
It's very evil because you're condemning. You're condemning both proverbial communities to a mutual lack of understanding forever.
And mutual contempt for each other.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing with it. So you should culturally appropriate. You should live. You should wear a sombrero for Halloween.
Absolutely.
Versace should make more ajrak shalwar kameez.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Then, you bring it, for example. So we've been talking about music a lot, and I think that's important because that is the medium that predates everything.
Yeah.
It's built into us. You'll just be sitting there and you'll be like,
yeah.
You'll be making some
tapping your feet,
right? Yeah. Movies didn't always exist. The written word, even now, we've sacralized it, right? But it didn't always exist. You know what people don't realize? I was reading an essay on this recently. It's called On the Cult of Books by Borges. And he goes through a bunch of historical examples about how when the written word first arrived, the way that a lot of people, a lot of Luddites are spooked by new mediums, like whether it's film or any kind of new medium, whether any kind of tech, right? People were similarly spooked by the written word. That was a thing that happened, right? So music predates everything. Coming back to your point, music predates everything, is universal. It has the most transformative and in the same vein manipulative potential that any of these things have.
Yeah.
It hacks your system. When you play a beat, right, you will inevitably want to tap your feet along to it, or you want to bop your head.
Yeah, there's a reason why the armies march to a beat.
And it will literally alter the beat of your heart.
Yeah, it's like, there's a collective unconscious aspect of it, marching to the same beat.
When you merge a medium as powerful as music, as invasive as music, with the soft power and the insistent messaging and the cultural charge of our neighboring nation, that a large part of which, whose mainstream is fundamentally opposed to us, that views us as terroristic, that views us as backward, that views us as people that they simply cannot coexist with, which is ironic. Is we made a country on the basis of wanting to live by our own culture.
Yeah.
Right? Wanting to live by our own values. We didn't create it because we thought the other communities so dastardly that we simply can't live with them. That's an abhorrent idea. That's an evil idea.
Yeah.
Right? Our idea, which is much more enlightened, was something along the lines of, you guys live how you want to live, and we just want to live how we want to live.
Yeah.
It's not that we think you're, it's not like we think low of you so that we can't live with you, right? We've got Hindus in Pakistan that we live with, thankfully, very equally, and they have like a pretty good standing in our society. Not being perfect, but they're doing pretty well. They're pretty well off, especially in Sindh. So, but on the other side, you've got this nation that's increasingly rhetorically charged against us, and louder and more consistently than the loudspeaker of a mosque. वो तो दिन में 5 बार होता है ना, आप पे 24 घंटे बॉलीवुड की चीजें चलती, right? So to think that, again, I'm not saying you can't consume or interact with this media in a healthy way, but to think that this has no compromising effect on your compass is just absurd.
Absolutely. So what's the step forward? How do we fix our culture malaise?
Dude, it's simple. You can't beat people into submission. You can't, with a danda, say कि कल अब कोई ये चीज consume नहीं करेगा. And you shouldn't. It doesn't work, and it's just,
it's anti-competitive in a way.
Approach. It's anti-competitive.
It's anti-competitive. We should make our own.
That is the answer, right? And look, what we're proposing is essentially us having a rival industry is a solution, right? It's the end game, right? How do you start that from day one? Well, this is how you start it.
Hey,
this is how.
This is how. Yeah, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're trying to do.
We're trying. Right? We're at least we're doing something.
Yeah.
Right. So triggering the conversation is essentially the first roll of the snowball.
Yeah.
Right? And then one day you get there. So yeah, absolutely. The solution is you have your own industry.
You have your own industry. You have a renaissance of all that is beautiful about your history, about your architecture, about your culture, about your artistic expressions. I agree with you. This is how empires of past have done it. This is how we should do it.
Cultural, religiously, the Islamic lens has always been very enlightened in the sense that the broad messaging is always, from a culture, you can keep what doesn't fundamentally oppose your morals, right? So I'm not saying burn everything. I'm not saying throw everything out the window. There's certainly joint strands of DNA that we have with the Indian subcontinent that there's no getting away from.
Yeah.
But can you moderate that? Can you modify that to look more like what Pakistani media should look like? Absolutely. And we were having a conversation with someone today. I think they were absolutely spot on with this. That when you try to do the item numbers and the super out there performances that Indians typically do,
Doesn't seem genuine.
It doesn't seem genuine. It's not. It's not even as good. It never can be, because in a country where you've got a billion people doing it, and then you parse through them very methodically in a giant industry, and you pick them out. That's really putting them through the mill and taking the best out of them, right? As opposed to here, where it seems so obviously forced.
Yeah.
Where even the people who watch your music videos, your movies, do so with a level of guilt.
Yeah.
Do you think that the masses? So you can make the moral argument where you say that, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Sure. But if we're completely honest, we can think of the average Pakistani who will end up going watching this movie on Eid because this actress that he finds really attractive is in it, right? He won't like the fact that he's doing it. A lot of them don't like the fact that they're interacting with this kind of media. It's, accompanied with this underlying guilt, or at the very least, of this awareness that we're copying something that is essentially foreign.
Pakistani warriorship.
It's Pakistani warriorship.
Yeah.
Exactly, because in the same breath, you're hating on them, and in the same breath, you're trying to do that. Once you've got to a place where you've got your own industry, uske baad, you won't have to play second fiddle to these guys that don't particularly like.
Yep, basically. That's